Hi, welcome to this episode of Worldwide Canadian. I'm Tim Clark. Today, I'm going to have a look and react to the latest episode of Marketplace with regard to EV charging. Stick around. So let me start by saying that Marketplace is taking a trip from one location in Ontario to another, and they're basically using an electric car as a new driver. My question would be, what would the result be had they had a flawless experience? Would there be a story at all? So is there a bias towards being negative towards EVs?
We're in an electric car on the way to Ottawa. It's fast, sleek, and with all the latest tech. But inside the cabin, the anxiety is real.
So when you talk about range anxiety, I call it lack of planning anxiety. You see, I've been driving my Bolt for 6 months now, and I know exactly how far I can drive based on the conditions outside.
So there's another warning, stay below 105 kilometers an hour to reach destination.
Range, the distance you can travel on a single charge, is a big deal for EV drivers. And you tell us your cars are sometimes coming up short.
The mileage in the winter drops quite substantially.
He drives slow and we can't turn on the heat because then our miles will disappear like that.
EVs are here, and eventually we're all expected to make the switch, with the feds doubling down on their plan to see all new car and truck sales be zero emission by 2035. So we're taking on range, charging, and repairs to see if we're on track for an all-electric future. Let's start with range. We're taking a winter road trip to see how far we can travel on a single charge. Range is central to the automaker's pitch, and the number is based on standard testing that combines simulated city and highway driving. But there's no specific range info for coal.
Why is it that Marketplace has chosen to do a video about range in wintertime? Well, a lot of people use this as a way to be negative towards EVs, saying that you can't go very far in the winter. And they also claim that the information is not available to say what the range would be, that it's the testing that the manufacturers do is based on standard tests going highway speeds at 21 degrees, let's say, during the summertime. But if you really just Google what would the actual range loss be in wintertime, there's plenty of folks out there that are doing independent testing and show that for the Bolt, as an example, you can lose 30% in the wintertime. So if I do a quick calculation of 30%, less the 445 kilometers I usually get in the summertime, I can calculate that I can get about 300 kilometers out of my Bolt on a -5 degree day. So the information is there if you really want to look for it.
For our test, we picked the most affordable model from the biggest name in EVs, the Tesla Model 3. Fully charged, our car's range today is 425 kilometers.
Okay, so let's punch in our destination.
And we pick a route. This Tesla supercharger in Pickering, Ontario, to the CBC building in Ottawa. That 410-kilometer distance is within our range.
Okay, battery's all topped up. Let's see how far we can get.
Right off the bat, we're told we're not gonna make it. But just minutes later, things change.
So there's a warning on the screen already saying stay below 100 kilometers an hour to reach the destination.
So using this Model 3 as an example, the car is not able to tell you how far you can drive on a full battery until it takes into account the temperature outside, the terrain of your route, how fast you're going to drive, and some of these things change. And so the car does automatically pop up warnings to let you know how to make your destination that you put into the system. Of course, you always have the option to stop somewhere and do a quick charge if you need additional range. So most people, what they do is they charge up to 80% and then they look for the next charger that is within range of that range, And they go and they do that and they charge a little bit and they continue on. They don't try to make it all in one hop. So this is showing a little bit of ignorance in how EV batteries actually charge and how they actually work.
But on a highway? Really? So we keep going to see what happens. While our Tesla rolls along, let's shift gears to our second test, charging. We're checking on fast charging stations from leading brands, Flow, ChargePoint, Ivy, and Petro-Canada, visiting 3 for each. But first, we visit Tesla's network. Experts say it's the largest and one of the best.
There's no issue with the charging station. It's all good.
But even this network has its moments.
So what are the chances that we are here today? There's a technician here from Tesla that's working on a couple of the pumps. So he's saying they're not actually broken, but in order to diagnose the problem, he has to shut them off. So you can't charge while he's working on them. We've got a lineup here of cars waiting for a charge. So there are 4 cars now in line that have showed up waiting for a charge since we've got here.
So this claim is a little bit of a sensationalism. Basically, she's pulled up and there are maybe 15 ports available and you see a lot of cars there, but how long have the cars been charging? They're not all going to stay for the same length of time, and so those 4 cars in lineup are not going to be waiting for all those other cars to go. They're going to move through the system fairly regularly. So when a car leaves, the next car will plug in, so you don't have to wait for all those other cars to finish. As regards to maintenance, most people would say that's a good thing to have Tesla send out a technician before the system is actually down. So we can't have our cake and eat it too. We have to have some maintenance at some point. You just happen to arrive to a very busy spot that has regular maintenance and they happen to be there at that time. But your wait is probably going to be about 15 minutes. And Tesla does a good job in their app of telling you what to expect for the busiest time of days to charge and which one is the best one to head to get the most efficient charging time.
Out-of-service chargers are a common complaint. So we want to see if the ones we visit actually work and if we come across any other problems along the way.
Let's charge it up.
We only visit locations the companies say are working. At this Flow location,
Oh, here it goes. So it's working. It's working. We're charging.
and at this Ivy machine,
We are charging. Did you hear it click?
but not every visit goes smoothly.
Like, am I doing something wrong though?
It takes multiple fails with Petro-Canada's app
Okay, we're in. Like, what am I doing wrong? Okay, go.
before we try a different machine using a credit card. And then, success.
Seriously.
So I wish I could tell you that charging's 100% successful every time. But in a lot of cases, what I found when I'm out and about charging and I find people having problems is it's how they're trying to start the charge that causes them the issue. And this is demonstrated here in this video by CBC. Number one, you must have the app installed on your phone and try to have that opened up. Plug your car in first so that there's communication between the car and the charger so it can figure out what type of car it's charging and what it's going to require, and then approve the actual purchase in the app. And if you want to use a credit card or a phone to tap, sometimes that's not going to work if the communications isn't available. Let's say in a parking garage or whatever, and it's just for whatever reason it doesn't get a signal. So what I do is I carry an RFID card for Flow and for any other charger that I'm using, which gives me a backup plan. But again, I always make sure I'm ready to actually authorize the purchase, plug in the car, and then go on the app and authorize.
We're not so lucky at this ChargePoint location.
Come on. No, nothing.
The app won't start the charging session.
It is not going.
Mary Annabella and her family know all about charging challenges. They experienced them while taking their week-old Nissan Leaf on its first road trip.
So we were really excited. My daughter was very excited to sleep in a tent for the first time ever.
Still new to the world of EVs, she and her husband Google a route that includes fast chargers.
We thought, okay, there's one, and what could go wrong?
Like most EV drivers, they typically charge at home with a level 2 charger. It's cheap, but takes hours. On the go, level 3 or fast charging will top you up quickly. Problem is,
The fast charger was disabled.
they can't find one that's working.
We try to connect our vehicle to it, and there's an error message.
After 4 stops, they're desperate for a charge and make a tough call at a slow charger.
So I said to my husband, you're gonna have to sleep in the car because it's gonna take 7 hours to charge it.
Marianne and her daughter head to a hotel.
It took us all day trying to find a charger and then finally giving up on a night of camping to stay in a hotel room, you know, the kind of hotel where people either live there or can, you know, pay by the hour.
I do feel bad for this mother and her daughter on their first trip in an EV having trouble. But again, if someone had taken the time to educate themselves and to know how it works before they took that first road trip, that might have been helpful in this situation. And you gotta love the sensationalism of claiming that they had to stay in a seedy motel or hotel that charges by the hour.
I can't imagine with a young daughter that this is like an ideal situation.
Yeah, it really wasn't. And so it was clear that we weren't gonna get anywhere.
Back with our charging test, this Ivy machine works.
Charging. Okay.
This Petro-Canada station looks promising too. But it gives out before the session actually starts. We share our results with George Eney of the Automobile Protection Association.
If you're deploying electric charging infrastructure, it should be to match the convenience and ease
Okay.
of the gasoline charging infrastructure.
Overall, we visit 12 locations. At 7, we have challenges with charging, including 2 locations where we can't charge.
You should be very far away from finding any failures.
Okay.
I mean, we expect, you know, if you're placing a cell phone call or filling up with gasoline, you expect, you know, I don't know, 99.9 plus reliability.
So the reliability of chargers is an issue, of course, because we want chargers to be reliable. And out of the 12 charging places, they had 2 that failed to work at all. That's a 16% failure rate, which is not acceptable in any way. But when she mentions the 7 that had challenges, I say the challenges is a lack of education of the person trying to use the charger and not knowing exactly what will work for that particular charger. So we all know Petro-Canada has a problem in Canada right now with their chargers. But that being said, I have managed to charge 100% of the time on my road trips using both the charger in Stewiacke, Nova Scotia and Spryfield, Nova Scotia. They have been reduced in speed, and one of the 2 charging spots didn't work, but I was able to get a charge and continue on my trip.
Now, when it comes to cost, prices are all over the map. Some say per minute, some say per hour, and the energy output can differ too. But only one location we visit bills by something called the kilowatt hour. That's the charging equivalent of by the liter for gas-powered cars. Experts and many EV drivers agree, saying this should be the standard across the board. It ensures you're paying for the energy you get, not the time it takes to charge. To get a better sense of what you're paying for when you charge, we do a price check across the 4 companies to get a kilowatt-hour comparison.
So finally, something in this episode that I really agree with. Number 1, there's been legislation in most provinces of Canada that the only people that can actually sell power are the utilities. So these charging companies were not able to charge by the kilowatt hour, which is the way it should be done. So they've set up a system where they charge by the time you're using the machine, in other words, by the hour. Petro-Canada is very expensive. It's $30 by the hour, whereas most of the chargers that are Flow are $15 an hour. So it really depends on two things. Number one, how fast does your car charge? And what is the base rate per hour that you're using at a particular charger. So if you're using the Chevy Bolt, it can only charge at a maximum of about 54 kilowatts per hour. And whereas a Hyundai Ioniq 5 can go over 180 to 200 and something, I think it is, kilowatts. So they can charge faster. The other thing that makes a difference is the size of your battery and how much you want to fill. So that is why most people will only fill up their cars to about 80%, at which time the car will even slow further to keep the battery from getting overheated.
So we're gonna charge this car for 20 minutes and see how much charge we get when we're done. We started our charge at 20% battery. Let's see where we get.
We do the math for the locations we visit. At ChargePoint, it's about 25 cents per kilowatt hour. At Flow, 42 cents. At both Ivy and Petro-Canada, it's 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Our final bills range from $5.20 to $10.09. The brands don't always set the prices, but you could be paying up to twice as much for the same charge depending on where you go. We share our findings with all 4 companies. ChargePoint says they have fixed some of the issues we've raised, and independent owners set the prices. Flow adds it's often the same at their stations too, and their machines work more than 98% of the time. Ivy says they're one of the first to adopt kilowatt-hour pricing, and they're committed to improving their processes. And Petro-Canada says they're working to meet the needs of customers, and they provide pricing that's competitive in each province. Back with our cold weather range test.
We're just about halfway through our trip, but here's the thing. Our car is telling us we don't have enough range left in order to travel the distance we still need to go.
But we're not giving up just yet. Running out of road.
I'm really nervous that we're not going to make it.
Drama queen much? Listen to the suspenseful music and the frantic phone call as she claims she's not going to make it, when the solution is clear as mud. Just stop somewhere and charge your vehicle for 15 minutes and gain the added distance you need so you can make it to your destination without worrying. There's no issue with charging. There's lots of them in that corridor, and they're not an area where there's few chargers. So I'm not sure why this is an issue. But for Marketplace, I think it's part of telling a story, whether it's true or not. Maybe you have a outcome that you already know that you want to demonstrate. So in this case, I find this as a very negative approach to providing the truth about EVs in Canada.
When we come back, we ask who exactly is taking charge.
We visited 12 locations. We had challenges charging at 7.
It's still an emerging sector, so of course there's going to be wrinkles.
We're going electric, looking at the cars in your future and challenges you're facing today. With range,
You can see now the car is telling us that we actually will get to where we're going with 2% battery.
and charging.
It took us all day trying to find a charger.
We're driving to Ottawa to see how far we can get on a single charge when it's cold.
Okay, so this just popped up on our screen. It's a battery low warning. It says there will be significantly less energy available from your battery if it gets colder. We recommend charging now. So we are not going to make it. We only have 77 kilometers of range left on the vehicle, and we have 129 kilometers left to go on our trip. We are not going to get to Ottawa.
Not a surprise to George Eney, who doesn't buy the range estimates promoted by automakers.
We would like to see something called effective range that would bear in mind the technical limitations of the batteries and the reality that what you really care about is highway range and not a combined range.
He and other experts are also calling for more transparency when it comes to winter driving.
Well, a cold weather range would be helpful, but extreme cold, say minus 20, standardized, with a test cycle that would consider a loss of range because the batteries can't
Sure.
function optimally, and also because you're heating the cabin.
So finally, another item that I agree with, in this case, it would be good to have more information with regard to using your EV in minus 20 degrees in Canada, for instance. So I would be all for that, but it's not going to be a major point for me because I know where the chargers are after educating myself on the reliability of certain networks, where they are, and how much charge I need to reach a certain distance. And the other option is to follow what the car was advising, charge now. And it doesn't sound like it's a hard concept to basically find a charger close by and charge up a little bit so I can make the difference between the 70 plus kilometers she has and the 120 plus kilometers she has to go. So this is kind of a construed problem that really doesn't exist for most drivers. They just know they need to plan a stop somewhere on their route so that they can continue on and make the full distance that they're planning on traveling.
Batteries don't perform as well in cold weather. Research has found range can be cut nearly in half. Tesla also warns that cold weather can increase energy consumption.
So with regard to the batteries not performing well in the cold, that's not actually true. What happens is it slows the charging speed, and also you use more power because you're heating your cabin to keep yourself warm. So that's where the percentage drop is, not in the fact that the battery is losing a percentage due to cold.
So we end our range test here, about 70% of the way. When we share our range test results with Tesla, they provide no comment. Once again, charging up to head home doesn't work out so well.
So we've just attempted to charge the car twice, and both times it has failed. Charging failed. That's the third time it's failed.
So the other thing is, in this particular spot, is if you have a decision in your mind on what you feel about something, you look for the things that confirm that. It's called confirmation bias. And that's what it appears to be here, because she chooses to use a CHAdeMO adapter on an IV charger to get a little bit of distance on her battery, instead of just heading to the Tesla charger that was designed to be trouble-free for her vehicle. So I'm not sure why that was the case when she had already charged at all of the 12 different charging places. And it just appears like CBC is molding the story to have the result that they're looking to confirm.
We hit a Tesla supercharger to get us back on the road. Now it's time to tackle electric vehicle repair.
I don't get an update unless I go in and ask.
Meet Chad Barnes. In September 2022, he's on his way to work when he gets a warning from his Hyundai Ioniq.
A light that came on that said, check electric vehicle system, and I started thinking, like, well, the whole car is electric, so what is that?
After work, he heads to the dealership. They can't figure it out, and his car has to stay.
So I went home for the weekend and didn't hear anything back until probably about the middle of the next week, and they called me and told me that Hyundai High Tech said, yeah, you need a new battery.
A new battery.
A new battery.
The battery is basically the lifeblood of the vehicle.
The battery is the car.
Fast forward, we are over a year later. Where are things at?
About the same. So I contact the dealership regularly, and they just keep giving me a new date as to when it's supposed to be here.
So what is happening?
To me, it seems like nothing.
It's the car's sitting there.
The car's sitting, yeah.
They give him a rental, but still, it costs him.
Like, I'm putting gas into it, because the rental I got is like a gas-powered car.
Hold on. You have an EV so that you can save money on gas. It's been in the shop for over a year, and you've been paying for gas that entire time?
Yes.
Is that at your own expense?
That's my own expense.
So just to be clear, you have been in contact regularly with the dealership, but you have reached out to Hyundai Canada. Have they given you an official response about what's happening?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing. Like, they did tell me that I should speak to the dealership.
Well, this Hyundai EV owner is having a horrible experience. It happens occasionally, and I do not think that this should be the way that it is handled. Number one, the battery failed for some reason. That is not typical. The vast majority, in fact, more than 95% of cars have a warranty for 160,000 kilometers on the battery for a reason, because Hyundai knows they're not going to fail in that length of time on average. They did have some problems with the early EVs like the Bolt and the Hyundai vehicles that required them to change batteries. So there was a high demand on batteries for quite some time, over 2 years. And so this customer got caught up in a problem where the battery, for whatever reason, wasn't available. Now, we don't have all the background in the story, like, was it just out of the blue? Did he hit something? There's been some stories circulating about Hyundai Ioniq requiring a $60,000 battery, but that was debunked by Hyundai themselves when the manufacturer made an announcement that this was something that the dealership did to basically make it harder for the insurance company to actually repair the vehicle and just to have a replacement.
I don't envy the manufacturers.
Mechanic Emily Chung says the supply of parts is just one of the repair issues causing headaches for EV owners.
I know that they have issues with their supply chain, and I think it goes to the whole issue of supply and demand, right? You don't have a lot of these parts, you don't have a lot of them built in the aftermarket either.
Her biggest concern, she says, automakers aren't sharing enough information.
What's really challenging about it is that every manufacturer can do it differently. There's no like standardized, here's how we're gonna design this EV. Oftentimes right now we don't have a lot of information in terms of how the system operates or what the information I'm actually looking for available to us.
I do agree that we need some standardization in how these vehicles are able to be dealt with, and third-party companies should be able to work on EVs if they have the proper training. So that's all getting worked out. It's still early days. It took a long time for vehicles like gas engine vehicles to have a system in place to service them and to provide fueling for them when they first started. And we're only maybe 10 years into the industry, and there are some major improvements happening in the industry. So CBC is picking and choosing the stories they want to basically show the worst case scenarios, which doesn't happen in the vast majority. Most EV drivers drive their vehicles for hundreds of thousands of kilometers without much repair at all. Maybe some tires, maybe check the brakes, but if you do one pedal driving, even that is very long between when it requires new brake pads. So the parts supply, of course, that I explained is to do with the high demand and, of course, COVID and all kinds of other shipping issues in the world. So that will all get worked out in time. And unfortunately, the same thing can be said for gas cars. I spoke to somebody who needed an engine replacement in their 2-year-old vehicle, and they're sitting 6 or 7 months waiting for that to be done.
She's not the only one sounding the alarm. There's a bill calling for more access before the House of Commons.
Number one, we won't know how to fix it. Number two, we also won't be able to train our technicians to fix them. So if you don't have that many providers, your cost is naturally going to go up. So the consumer is going to have to pay more. 100%. And does it seem fair that you should have to take your EV to a dealership? I will ask you this. I'm a licensed technician. Is it fair that I take my vehicle, that I'm a licensed technician, to another shop for another licensed technician to fix? To me, that's incredible that I need to do that.
We reach out to 2 industry groups that represent the manufacturers. Both the Global Automakers of Canada and the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association say there's a voluntary agreement in place for sharing information, and mechanics have what they need to make repairs. Back with Chad, we're at the Hyundai dealership for an update on his car.
Chad, you just walked inside. Tell me what the latest is.
Well, the latest is the battery has arrived and they've installed it in the car.
You have a battery.
I have a battery.
But he can't take his car home just yet.
So now they're waiting for that to come in, a new coolant warmer.
Do you even want this car back?
I'm not confident I want the car back. I want to make sure the car's 100%.
And those gas receipts from his rentals?
I'm going to hold on to them, and at some point, I'm hoping somebody's going to compensate me for them. Like, I bought the electric car for a reason, and I spent 15 months putting gas into another one.
In a lot of these cases, when you hear these horror stories, it's the dealer locally that's causing the issue. Hyundai Canada confirms that Chad should have gotten a new battery, and it sounds to me like they're going to reimburse him for the added cost of fueling his gas car that they loaned him for this period of time.
We reach out to Hyundai Canada about Chad's case. They reference supply chain issues, but acknowledge Chad should have received a new battery sooner. And they're working to ensure he's satisfied with next steps, including covering his gas expenses.
Are we putting the proverbial cart before the horse here? Do we need to have the infrastructure in place before we can all be driving these cars?
You would need public charging at a reasonable price, widely available, and with 2035 technology, not today's. The charging infrastructure is currently a weak link if you want 100% adoption.
The feds want us all driving EVs, but is there a realistic plan to get us there? It's time for us to ask Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault.
So we visited 12 locations. We had challenges charging at 7.
We have to work hand in hand with provinces and territories or companies, utilities, deploying charging stations to ensure that not only do we have charging stations, but that they are working.
But do you think that's really working right now, based on the problems that we encountered and what other people are reporting?
Your sample is a very small one.
But there are problems.
There are problems, and we're working to address those problems.
But what does that say about how well the system is working for Canadians?
By and large, EV users are very, very happy. It's still an emerging sector, so of course there's going to be wrinkles and things we need to ensure are done better.
And when it comes to pricing,
why not have one consistent way of billing so that people can compare prices and also have some transparency?
Well, I think transparency is key, certainly, and those systems are known, and hopefully, and I think it is possible, we will end up agreeing that we should all use the same system across the country. Using a kilowatt per hour system would be the best and most efficient system.
Well, this makes me think of that commercial where there's Captain Obvious. Of course there are problems when you implement any new technology, and it is getting better. There have been announcement after announcement of public funding and subsidies for charging infrastructure to be installed, and the existing spaces are getting added ability to add more charging stations, and now most of the car manufacturers are going to be using the NACS charging standard and be able to use all of those Tesla chargers throughout North America. So the minister is right when he says it's early days and things are going to improve. And as demand increases, there's going to be more and more charging available to you where you travel when you're not at home. And remember, 85% of people do charge at home and they charge overnight, so it's going to be just fine.
We also ask him about adding cold weather range information so consumers can make a more informed choice.
And I'm sure you would agree that cold weather impacts these cars. It's widely accepted.
The impact on the battery, the impact of the cold is much less now than it was 4 years ago. There's still an impact, absolutely.
Okay, why not then help everyone out, post a cold weather range on the vehicles with those EnerGuide stickers when people are car shopping? Wouldn't that help people make a more informed choice?
Not something, first time I hear about this. I would certainly talk to the minister and ministry responsible to get their views on the feasibility and what would be the advantages of doing that.
But are you happy with how fast we're moving? Because consumers are not.
I want us to move faster, of course.
We'll be keeping our eyes on the road ahead, too.
Well, it's a very interesting approach to denigrate EVs before they're fully implemented and use people that are new to the EV world. And so this video for me is a little bit of a miss. There are some things that I do agree with in the video, including the need for by the kilowatt hour charging instead of by the hour, and also the increased need for some charging throughout major routes in Canada, so people have options to charge to make the distances that they need to go. Other than that, Marketplace, this is a little bit of a miss for us here, and we'll be watching you in the future and hoping that you will do a better job at giving a balanced look at EVs in Canada. That's it for this episode of Worldwide Canadian. If you can hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed, and the like button on this video along with that bell icon so you can get notified every time I upload new content. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time right here on Worldwide Canadian.